CONvergence Story Slam. Oh, you sound like medium excited. I think we should be really excited. Who's excited to be here? Yay! I'm Allison Brewer, and I will be your hostess through this amazing night of storytelling. This is the first time we're doing a story slam at CONvergence, so thank you for being brave pioneers here tonight. I know, isn't it exciting? So here's the deal. We're pivoting with what our audience is here for here tonight. So we have a couple of people that said, I really want to share a story. It's not necessarily true. Great, let's share that story. We have a few people that said, I've never done this before, but I think I'm going to share a story. Awesome. Let's do all of it, okay? We're just going to have a really chill, fun time sharing some stories tonight. We're going to throw the judging away since that was stressful to some people. So, we're all winners here this evening. Yeah, love that for us. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to have up to 7 minutes to tell your story. I'm going to be down in that front row. At about 6 minutes, I'm going to turn the flashlight on my phone and kind of just wiggle it at you. So if you see that, just know you should start wrapping up, okay? And we're not going to give you time penalties. We're not going to boo you off the stage. But if it's I don't know, a super long time after that, and there's we don't know when it's gonna end, I'm gonna just start creeping up here awkwardly. Don't make me do that, it's so awkward, okay? But that's your sign to really wrap it up. We are going to cheer so loud for our storytellers. One thing that I love about storytelling is that we all have stories. We're all storytellers. You don't need to train a whole ton to get up here and just share a story. Those of you that are just gonna be doing this for the first time, just think of a beginning, a middle, and end, and just kind of have that in your brain. Get to those places, okay? And that'll get us there. And we're just gonna enjoy just sharing some of the human experience with each other. When I'm not here, I run a story slam at Strike Theater. I'm one of the co-owners of Strike Theater in Northeast Minneapolis. So if you get into this, we do improv, storytelling, spoken word every weekend. So this can be your foray into something new. So couple of things. When we're sharing stories, we're being vulnerable with the audience. And audience, I'm asking you to support our storytellers up here. One, if something's funny, feel free to laugh at it, okay? All right. I know it's a big ask. It doesn't all need to be serious, okay? So we can give a laugh. But sometimes stories are serious. And so if you want to give it, if you hear something where you're yeah, I'm really into that, we're going to give it some snaps, okay? So you might want to picture a little snap that you can give some love to somebody. If you're just moved beyond words, you might even just give it a mm-hmm. Okay, so just a dulcet move from the audience, real high praise for our storytellers tonight. And the big thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna clap so loud when every storyteller comes up here and when they finish, because they're being brave, they're being vulnerable, and we just wanna support everyone in this room. Let's hear what that's gonna sound like. Yes! Okay, and we are gonna do, let's see here. We have 2, 4, 6 people on our list. As we're going through the night, if you think of something you might want to share, just come up to me and tell me your name, and I'll put you down on the list, okay? We're going to be just real chill. It's going to be so fun. Let's make a bunch of noise for our first storyteller tonight, your very own host, Allison Brewer. I'm not a science geek. In fact, I'm the only person in my whole high school class that was in calculus, but not in chemistry. And my teacher told me, it's kind of weird you're not taking both. And I was I do not understand science. And I went on believing that through college and through adulthood until I downloaded this game on my cell phone one day, and it was a game where you bred frogs. And it was on your phone, and your goals were to try to make these different colored frogs with certain colors of eyes, and like you could get the bonuses, for making the right frogs by breeding the right frogs together. So all of a sudden, I was digging into science. I wanted to learn everything I could about genetics so I can beat this frog game on my phone that I played during work at a job that I hated. And so I would spend hours and hours of my day trying to breed frogs, waiting for them to hatch, knowing the percentages that they might have the right colored eyes or the right dots on their back. It got intense. I made an Excel spreadsheet that I kept that I did like analytics on at night. My now husband was like, you're a little, like, I support you wanting to play games, but this is like a little weird, right? And that went on for like a number of months until, as games do, it kind of came into my life and out of my life. But during the pandemic, I had another option to make science come alive in my home. I had a friend who called me up and she said, I have my 2 axolotls. Does anyone not know what axolotls are? They live underwater. They look kind of like salamanders, but they have like the fluffy little head gills, and they're always smiling, okay? They're super cute. She had 2 axolotls at home. And she called me and she said, they laid eggs. They laid like 450 eggs. And I said, oh, well, it's a pandemic, and my husband and I are at home not doing much. Why don't you give me like 50 and we'll see what happens? And so I'm seeing my friend for the first time in months. I'm leaving the house to go up and pick up this dish of axolotl larvae. They live in these little jelly balls. They're very tiny, smaller than like a little grain of rice in them. And I bring them home and know that they should start hatching in 4 to 6 weeks. And they're nice and they're clear and we can see them developing, and it's so fun, and it was like just such the perfect thing to take my mind off of like the hellscape that was happening everywhere outside of me. My husband's a massage therapist. He obviously wasn't massaging anyone, so we turned his home studio into our science lab. We had all these little bowls full of little larvae in there. And then we found out when they started to hatch, they're smaller than a grain of rice. They're so tiny. And in order to keep them alive, you need to make brine shrimp to feed them. And when I say, some of you know, brine shrimp are also known as sea monkeys, if any of you raised them when you were kids. So all of a sudden, I'm doing elementary school science. I'm cutting those 2 liters open. I'm putting the little eggs in there. I have bubblers going, like there's like little wires everywhere, bubbles coming out. And brine shrimp are invisible to the eye. Like that's the joke of them. So when they start hatching and they need to be fed, I have to take my brine shrimp into a back bedroom with no windows, and I shut the door and I shine a flashlight onto their 2-liter bottle, and they flock to the light. And then I put a little turkey baster of them in there, and then I squirt them into a net, and then I have to wash them off because they're in salt water and they need to be clean when they go to the axolotls. And then you dump them in with the little rice-sized axolotls, and they start eating the brine shrimp. And you can see them twitching around a little and munching just a little bit. And it's cute, but it's tedious because you actually have to clean their water every time they eat, because otherwise the brine shrimp will swarm them and kill them. So twice a day I'm going through this for like my 20-some babies that have hatched. And this is becoming a full-time job. We didn't know that we were getting into science. And then we start learning that some of the genetic mutations that I have in my axolotls are hardier than others. And so I'm doing a lot of that research like I used to do in the frog game to see which ones might make it and which ones might not, and how we could take care of them. And then some of them die. We put some of them in our refrigerator to cool them down to see if they'll heal, and they just sort of leave overnight. And my husband is nice and takes care of them, so I'm not crying at the fridge every morning. And honestly, they say out of 40 eggs, 40 larvae of axolotls, getting like 1 or 2 of them to survive is a pretty good survival rate. So we were doing pretty well. We had like 15-ish that hatched out of my group of 40. And then they start getting a little bit, they're born without legs. Their legs start coming out. So cute. They get these little legs coming out, and they're a little bit bigger now. So they move on to something called blackworms. Blackworms are friggin' disgusting. They are skinny like a piece of thread, and they ball up together and they pulse, and you have to keep them in your refrigerator. So the only time I'm leaving my house in this pandemic is to go out and buy blackworms from the aquarium store. But you may remember at this time of the pandemic that California was on fire. California was burning down. The biggest black worm manufacturer in the United States had to pack up and leave. So there was a black worm shortage in America. And so all of a sudden, I'm faced with losing all of my axolotls if I can't find blackworms for them. So I'm calling all the fish places saying, hey, do you know when you'll get a delivery in? And they're like, maybe tomorrow. And I'm like, what time does the UPS man come? And then I'm asking if I slip them an extra $5 if they'll just bring it out to my car with a mask on because I don't want to go into stores. And so we're hunting day and night, only leaving our house to get blackworms. And they keep surviving, and their arms keep growing. And then they move on to redworms, which can be frozen, can be not. They're like a little bit less gross than blackworms are, but you have to clean their water because they're messy. If you put frozen worms in and they don't eat them all, got to clean the water. So we're just cleaning water day and night, watching their little arms grow. You can see their stomachs are invisible, so you can see when they're eating, you can see the worms go into their heads. It's magnificent. Axolotls are scientific wonders, you all. They're used in test labs all over the place because their limbs will grow back if they're chomped off. Their organs will grow back. Their lungs will grow back if they're damaged. Their brains will grow back if they're damaged. They're used in Alzheimer's research. They're used in curing cancer research. And all pet axolotls come from these labs because there's only one lake in Mexico where they still survive in the wild. And you know that you have a strain of lab-grown axolotls because some of them will glow under a black light because they have been injected with GFP from jellyfish as part of these experiments to see how they grow. And so I have one that glows under a black light. She's a beautiful golden girl. She's not part of my hatch. She is an axolotl that I won off of Facebook. Did you know you could do such things? When I was learning to raise axolotls, I joined all these Facebook groups about raising them and met a breeder from River Falls, Wisconsin. And she had a little lottery one day, and I was the winner. I was so excited. I'd never win things like that. And she said I could pick out an axolotl up to like $150 from her shop. And so I picked out this beautiful golden girl, and it was the middle of winter by now. We were 4 or 5 months into our axolotl raising, and I drove to a Portillo's in Woodbury in the middle of winter. It was freezing cold. It was like 30 below zero, and she drives up next to me, and she rolls down her window, and I say, "Are you the axolotl lady?" And she says, "Yes," and she hands me a bag with an axolotl in it, and that is how I got Wembley, my beautiful GFP axolotl. She is the only girl in my group. I learned that the hard way because you cannot sex axolotls until they're about 15 months old, yet they can start having babies when they're about 8 months old. I know. So the good news is the one that wasn't a brother was the one that got pregnant, and I found a very nice lady from PetSmart that wanted to try to raise the clutch. So she too came to my house in the pandemic, and I set a bowl out that had 400 larvae for her to take away off into the wilderness. Our axolotls now live in 4 or 5 different states as they've gone off into the world. We still have 4 of our original and my beautiful girl, Wembley. They bring us a lot of joy. They're real weirdos. They float to the top of their tanks. They take a gulp of air, and they're like weightless. like they're in space as they float down to the ground. And, sometimes I wonder why we did this. But I also think about all of the science I learned that I never learned in high school or college or grade school, for that matter, that I learned by doing this. And it makes me think that education can be different. And if I learned this much by doing, hopefully, our kids can learn by doing things like this in their classrooms too. And I'll never get sick of, when I'm on my meetings, watching the axolotls floating around, always positive with their smiles. Thank you. We're going to welcome up to the stage a story that I believe is fiction. You can remind me if it's not when you get up here. But put your hands together as we welcome to the stage Pat Harrigan.
Hi. This is fiction. Thank you. Brief plug before I start. I write a series of horror microfictions for the website ghoulishdelights.com. So every Sunday, you can go to ghoulishdelights.com and read something to make your upcoming week more unpleasant. This is one that hasn't been published yet. It'll come out later this year. It's called Out of Mulberry Street. It was the brightest fucking light I ever saw, like as if the sun jumped out and surprised you in the middle of the night. For a week or more, I'd heard word of this fellow going around making mischief in all the alleys and slum houses below 14th Street, but I never did see him myself until that night, and I can't properly say I saw him then. I was drinking in a Mulberry Street saloon, not a usual haunt of mine, but thirst being what it was, and it was dark as hell, and loud with singing and some women laughing who looked better in the dark. I happened to be glancing toward the door where just beyond you could see a little of the street lamp through the dirty window, and I saw the door open and a fellow walked in holding some items in both hands. I thought, Jesus, he's got a pistol to shoot up the place. And the next thing I know, this light, like a blue knife slashing you across the eyes, and the women shouted and the brats all cried, and before we knew what had happened, he was gone. Now later I saw the photographs when he had them on exhibit way uptown in a Protestant church on Broadway at 71st Street. Me and my girl walked all that way and home again one afternoon to see the man talk, and he was a right moralizing man at that, to be sure, with unkind words for those of us doomed to spend our sad wee lives around the 5 points. Though in fairness, my girl thought he had a kind heart and was especially worried about the children. And it's true that in the lantern light of his slides, those babies gathered in their straw beds like a passel of rats were a most affecting sight. Naturally, my girl and me were most inclined to see the portrait he had made of us in the saloon that night, since that was the very night we met, but on that occasion he did not display it. However, I approached the man himself after his sermon, and he was most generous and opened a case he had with him and displayed a number of images that he had not chosen to present that day. And among them was the very one, and my girl and I both were sort of in a marvel about it because, as she said, this was the first time she had ever seen her own face outside a mirror, and that was true for me as well. We thanked him, and she gave him some pennies even, and homeward we walked. However, I said goodbye to my girl very soon after that and have not seen her since. And the reason for that is that when I saw her face and figure in that photograph, very much white and almost glowing like a lamp in fog, only a few moments before we met and fell to talking about the light that had surprised us, I seemed to see within her dress the shape of her bones inside, and even the shape of the stool and bar behind her, so that it seemed that the light had shoved all the spirit out of her that night and left only the thinnest creature behind. If she had spied this herself in her image, she did not tell me, but it was a conception that never again left my mind, so that I could no longer bear to spend time in her company, and left her behind, though we both wept sorely about it. Thank you.
Keep it going for Pat! Yes. Okay. I'm gonna give you our on deck. We're gonna have Robert on deck, and then we're gonna have Nathaniel after that. Don't come running up quite yet, but just you're almost ready. He's like just slow motion running up here. So I just want to thank you all for coming in. For those that just came in, we're just having a chill night of sharing stories. If you want to share any like geeky loving hobby story that you have, come and just poke me up here and I'll add you to our list. We're just flexing and rolling with it, and we have a delightful little night going on. All right, let's make a bunch of noises. Welcome to the stage, Robert!
All right, is this working? Can you hear me without adjusting it too much here? Maybe? How's this? Well, okay, do I have to like go like this? All right, let's.
Here, let's move it up a little bit.
I've had bad experience with this before. Is this the wrong adjustment?
No, you can do that.
No, that's not the right adjustment. There we go.
There you go.
How's that? Is that better? Okay. Hello. I appreciate the lights. I can't see most of you. My name is Robert Atendido. I'm a 6'2" Asian guy with a Spanish last name. That's not the story I'm telling, but this is true as far as I can remember it. Now, this is a story of how once I found my geekiness, it affected my whole life from when I was about 14 on. And it's had some interesting side effects, but I almost lost it. Now, when I was a kid, I was the only non-white kid in the neighborhood, apart from my brother. And so I was naturally introverted and also imposed from outside introverted. So I was like, I had no hobbies, I had no getting out and hanging out with people. I did have friends who were trying to help me find a place and a hobby. And the thing that they all went into in elementary school was music, elementary school band, and I followed them to that, and I found out I really liked music. The complexity of learning how to read music notation and translating that to my fingers really appealed to what is probably a still undiagnosed case of neurospiciness. But so I was in elementary school band all the way through elementary school. I was in junior high school band. I played the clarinet really badly. And as I came up to high school, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to continue. Also, I know the high school band director was also my band director in elementary school, and he was really, really bitter at having to split time between the high school and elementary school. And actually, he was much better at that point, but I didn't know that because I hadn't seen him in a few years. So I quit the band, and I was like kind of floating around. My freshman year in high school, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So this is 1986, fall of 1986, and I go up into high school, and my friend's like, why aren't you in band? Well, I don't want to be in this band director. Well, why don't you try joining the stage crew for the fall musical? Okay, something to do, and I had a lot of fun. Again, learning how to use power tools, freaking out my parents because I knew how to use power tools, building stage sets, building an entire rake stage. And my best friend and I would walk up and down the hallway on the side of the auditorium, talking, carrying lumber, carrying equipment, laughing, joking. And all of a sudden one day, on the other side of the hallway from the auditorium, a door opened, and a small, energetic woman jumped out and screamed, "Where's that voice?" We're freshmen, we have no idea who this woman is. So she ran up to us, this dignified teacher lady running up to us, and she went to my friend, "You talk." Well, what? Huh? Not you, you talk. Well, you, would you like to join choir? So I was very happy to be able to continue my music geekdom as a choir geek. And as a choir geek, yes, I found my people. It took me a long time to open up to them, but they were welcoming and friendly and didn't care what other people thought and were willing to look and see who I was rather than what I looked like. And that one small event. Actually, let me explain. What happened was, as we're going up and down the hallway, on the other side of the hallway was the choir room and the choir director's office. And my voice, which was already like this, penetrated the cinder block wall of her office. And she jumped up, walked around to the door of the office, to the door of the choir room, and by the time she got in the hallway 6 or 7 times, I was gone. So finally, she ran out to find me, and she was all out of breath, and that's why we were freaking out. So I joined choir, and it did mess up my schedule a little bit because I hadn't signed up for it in the first place, but they rearranged some things. And they put me into the concert choir straight away because it's high school choir. They need guys. And my introversion was kind of like, am I going to be able to do this? But then she had me singing solos. I went to the All-State Choir. I went to the Dorian Festival in Iowa and sang solo in a rehearsal of about 10,000 singers. I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on? But that one small event, which was pretty big at the time, it has continued to affect me and have knock-on effects my entire life. Singing in high school made me realize, I want to try being in music. Maybe not a musician, maybe I want to be a teacher. I went to St. Olaf College. I joined the St. Olaf Choir, went on tour all around the country and to Norway. I became a music teacher. I taught music in the St. Paul Public Schools for 8 years. And I started out in the high school, and then I went to elementary school, and that was the best time of my life working in America. But due to budget cuts and things, my classroom got cut, but I thought, you know what, let's see if I can continue at least the teaching part. And so I applied for and received a position in what's called the JET program, the Japan Exchange Teaching Program. So choir hallway, choir, music teacher, teacher of English in Japan. And I stayed in Japan for 8.5 years. Came back to America, and I continued my musical efforts. I now sing in a group called Vocal Essence. We do concerts every year. It's so much fun. But the most surprising knock-on effect of that one decision, that one event, one of my fellow teachers at the elementary school I taught at, Prosperity Heights Elementary School, the late lamented Prosperity Heights, she said, hey, Rob, I know you like this science fiction geeky stuff. I have this event I want to go to, but I need a ride. Can you drive me to this? So yeah, I went to the DoubleTree, like, what is this thing? Oh, here, you can go in, you can share my badge. Ooh. My brother was working registration. He's like, hell no. But then he bought me my badge, and I've been coming ever since. And so I guess the moral of the story is, say yes to those really small events because you have no idea where they're going to take you. Thank you very much.
Keep it going for Robert. Oh my gosh, I laughed, I cried, I did all the things. Oh, Robert, I went to Dorian Festival. Yeah, I was a trombone player. I was big into band in grade school, and then I moved to a high school where the band was like bad. I moved to a different town, and I came from this really good town, and it was not good, and there's 28 people in our band. It was a very tiny little band, and I got there, and we were big into like marching band and stuff in my old thing, and I was like, this band has to march, and our band director is like, okay, well, I don't know much about that. And I was like, buy me a whistle, I'll take care of it. And so he bought me a whistle, and then all of a sudden our band was out there practicing marching in the football field during band. And I said, we can perform at the football games. And he said, we don't have any uniforms. And I said, well, like, let's go dig through the closets. And so we dig through all of the closets, like the storage closets at my high school, and we find the band uniforms from the 1970s. They were about almost 30 years old old at this time. Old polyester, heavy as hell, those leather tops, you know, the big tall hats with the feathers. And we found 28 of them to fit our ragtag little band. And our school had a marching band for the first time in like 15, 20 some years. It was so fun. We weren't that good. But whenever we did competitions, they're always like, your trombone player is really good. And I was like, okay, so right now we're going to have on deck, we're going to have Ted. But coming up here, let's make a bunch of noise and he can tell us whether he chose his fiction or nonfiction story. Let's welcome to the stage, Nathaniel.
It is fiction. So there is this wasteland sniper, one of the greatest wasteland snipers in the region in post-apocalyptic America. He goes by the Dove, not to be confused with Raven from Yemen before the apocalypse. So he wears a gray robe. With frayed sleeves and a frayed drape. He wears some combat webbing and pouch attachment ladder system. PALs for short. He wears the suspenders and belts with a variety of pouches on it, and then he carries a scrap rifle made at some like shop. It's just a single shot, bolt action with a scope made in that same shop. And then there's also a 40 millimeter grenade pistol that he has on his hip. On those suspenders, and they contain high explosive rounds. And then he also has on his backside for a left-hand holster a Mac 10, Mac 11 style pistol, also made in that same shop. And he also has on his right thigh, you barely can notice it because the drape end of the robe is frayed as well, and he has like a knife, an old worn kitchen knife that he's had for so many years. And he also has something on his back, an axe with like a rusted cog on it, wooden handle. More on that later. But also he has on his side a messenger bag, also bearing PAL's webbing, with a 1-quart and 2-quart pouch attached to that messenger bag. Anyway, how he got the axe is because he was on some mission before. He had a machete and on his back in some scabbard. But how he got that axe, long story short, he took out. There was an assignment, some guy named Al, to take out a tyrannical figure and its executioner from a town. And there was just this ruthless, tyrannical figure with the executioner with that axe, and a Dove was tasked to take out the leader, the tyrant, and the executioner. He was able to take it out just reloading one in the chamber, and then after firing, had to reload another one in the chamber, and took him out both. That's how he got the axe on his back, and it's a wood axe, wood handle with a metal cog on it, and he wears it on his back as a trophy, but also uses it for cutting too. He also forgot to mention this. He also wore a gray like bandana mask, solid, with 2 eyes cut open, and now at the moment, well, not at the moment, but how the story ends is he's actually looking for an individual by the name of, calls them the Swamp Sniper, that's like based in like an East Coast. Most of the country is like desert, nuked wasteland, but in certain regions, similar to the Red Forest in Chernobyl, there's also semi-wooded areas, mostly wood, barren, and it's highly irradiated, but it hasn't been like wiped out entirely. So yeah, that's the story, and it's highly based on it's based on an airsoft event called Revelation based in Balakat Airsoft, and that was my inspiration for the story. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me during the pandemic also, my husband got into this like video game group. And maybe some of you has husbands or kids that they put their headsets on and they're just like all talking to each other. That was like a new thing in my life. And so I walk by many nights now and I'll hear him saying, this is like my favorite, he'll say things like, all right, is everyone in the cabin? Should we all get into bed together now? And I'm like, what exactly is happening in these games? And then I go and see these like military cots that they're all like hopping into simultaneously to like get their like most power or whatever. I will never stop making fun of him for that, but it is rather endearing. Okay, so on deck right now, we have Elizabeth, and let's put our hands together as we welcome to the stage, Ted!
All right, how is this for volume back there? Is it okay? All right. All right, this is a little dark, but hopefully it's also funny and maybe a little informative. I've only missed one CONvergence in a little over a decade, and that was 2 years ago. Week and a half before Con, I was having a really stressful, tough day. We moved my big kids into their first place together on their own. They got a bunch of cute stuff. But it was a really hot, stressful, hard move, and it was rushed because I had to go work security at a protest, which was also a long, stressful thing in the heat. After we got done with the move, we ran to the store, and while we're at the store, we get a call from my kid's partner that the apartment is flooding, that we just moved all their stuff into. My only memory from that day that is intact actually is going there and seeing the flooding and watching them build little sandbars trying to stop the flood. But I went from there to my protest, and after a while out there in the heat, I started feeling very off. So I told a friend of mine, Raj, that I didn't feel good and I was going to drive to the hospital. And I called my kids and said I was going to drive to Regions because we were in St. Paul. My friend Raj, fortunately, said, I'll go with you, and I was frankly kind of crabby with him from what I hear. I didn't want people taking care of me, you know, the usual dumb kind of human/male nonsense. So Raj came with me, we got in the car. I slumped over and I died. And I don't mean that, I mean that literally. I had a cardiac arrest. I turned pasty and cold. As I first heard the story, I thought my friend Raj knew CPR and saved my life. He didn't. He called 911, and they talked him through performing CPR on me. So then an ambulance came. They decided to take me to the U of M, not Regions. So my family didn't know where I was for a while. They got me there. They spent about, I don't know, a day or so saving my life, and then put me in a medical coma for like 2.5 weeks. So that's where I was for Con. But the thing is when you come back from a traumatic episode like that, you have the same experience over and over again. And at first, you know, you have a tube in your throat, you can't talk, you're uncomfortable. But they'll keep saying, do you know what happened? And at first you don't. And then they'll tell you you had a heart attack and you died. And you remember that, but you don't remember all the little details they tell you. So they keep asking that to see how your head's doing. So time and time again, do you know what happened to you? Mm-hmm. Do you know what day it is? And time again, my reaction is, why the hell are you asking me what day it is? You just told me I died and I'm in a coma. But eventually you realize what's going on and it proceeds. But the really strange thing about the human brain is that it's sort of like dreams. if you don't have information, if you don't have input, your brain just makes things up. It just fills in the blanks. So the next many days of my reality are a mixed dream state where some of that dream state is actually dreaming, and some of that dream state is being awake. But just like a dream, it isn't necessarily real. So I was in a hospital bed next to Jimmy Walker, Kid Dynamite from 70s sitcom fame, who for some reason was working with my boss at my first job from like 30 years ago. And if you mentioned something to me, it would become my reality. So the kids were talking about maybe pirating a show that I had wanted to see so I could see it while I was still in the hospital. So then in my reality, they did pirate the show, and it got in the hospital network, and everyone was watching my show. Obviously, this was not true. And it just continued on like that. For some reason, and this isn't something I would actually do in real life, but for some reason, I was taking acid with a bunch of people to help them understand Hunter S. Thompson better. And we were doing this in an ice rink along the side. And then it later turned out that that ice rink was in fact attached to the basement of my house and the hospital. So it was a conduit between my home and the hospital. And I was really hung up on this fact. So now I'm starting to recover, and a lot of my reality is becoming a true reality. I'm doing better and better, but I still have these pieces of non-reality. And what was happening was they were getting ready to put me in a care facility because, I was psychotic. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. So I was walking with some doctors and explaining this non-truth to me, and they told me it wasn't true. And when your mind feeds you something, it is so true. Think about this when you deal with people who have strange ideas or conspiracy hang-ups or whatever. It's so true, and you completely believe it. And someone knowledgeable can tell you otherwise, and your reaction is, why are these crazy people saying this to me? Why are these doctors not believing that my house is connected to the hospital through this ice rink? So I went to a phone as quickly as possible and called my family and told them, these doctors don't believe that our house is connected to the hospital by an ice rink. And my son said, it's not. And my brain went to, oh my God, my family's part of the conspiracy. And I had a really, really, really painful 30 seconds as I processed it through, and then just like a light switch, it clicked. And my reality became, I don't know what my reality is. And I started recovering, and I spent the next weeks teasing through the realities. Did my kids actually try to break me out of the hospital? Unfortunately, no. I really wanted to go, but they listened to the doctors instead. Just ongoing that. So in that one moment, that reaction, that saved me from having to go to a care facility. I got to enter rehab, and I'm actually, like a very lucky person. I recovered physically and mentally fully, essentially. But it was very strange there for a little bit. Thank you for listening.
Oh my gosh, Ted, that was so amazing to hear. My husband was once in a drug-induced coma from an asthma attack for 2 weeks, and what he remembers when he woke up was me holding his arms down so he wouldn't try to yank the tube out. And what I didn't know for weeks after that is he thought he was in a diner that was burning, and I was holding the door shut so he couldn't get out, and I was like trying to kill him. And he was scared of me for like 6 weeks afterward until he finally like told me that, and I was like, wait, what? No, that didn't happen, And then he said I kept jumping out at him, but I was just going about life normally. But it was a tough few months for sure. So it's really interesting to hear someone that like lived through that, like share that experience too. Thanks so much. Does anyone else want to get on the list out there? Oh, one more. What's your name? Jamie? Okay, I'll put you down. On deck, we have Jose, but right now, let's make a bunch of noise as we welcome to the stage Elizabeth!
My story is also about medical. I think this might be a little high. And maybe a little bit about how husbands and wives experience medical stuff differently. A regular Wednesday, I'm with my kids at an indoor play park. And I go down the slide, and I get to the bottom, and we can cuss, right? It hurts my ass real bad. And I didn't fall off the end of the slide. It just really radiated through my lower back and my butt. And I go to my husband, oh my God, I think I have a really bad hemorrhoid, like the worst hemorrhoid. Because I connect that a friend of mine had just had medical procedure on a hemorrhoid. So I wiki doctor myself and I say that's what I have. And so I go home that night and I get a sitz bath and I get all the things I think that are gonna help. I make those witch hazel pads and I sit there and it's now Thursday. I kind of feel off. And I go take my daughter to the bus and I'm walking back from the bus stop and I say to my neighbor, I don't feel that great. She goes, oh, I just had the flu yesterday. I know what you feel like. And I was like, oh, again, I wiki doctor myself. And I'm like, oh, I just have the flu. And so I don't feel better though, but then I feel bursts of feeling better and I think, okay. So Friday, I really feel like this pain that's radiating from my hemorrhoid is just awful. So I have to ask my partner, can you come in the bedroom and look at my hemorrhoid and tell me like how bad it is? So I'm bent over our bedroom, not in a sexy way at all. And my husband has the nice thing to say to me, nope, they look usual. Because I'm a woman of a certain age, had children, so hemorrhoids are not unexpected. And I was like, really? He's like, actually, I don't think I see anything. And I was like, you don't see the hemorrhoid? Like, are you blind? Because it's really painful. So then I think to myself, you know what? I bet I'm just blocked up. So I'm going to get stool softeners, because that's going to help my problem. So I wiki doctor myself to the pharmacy. The thing is that they don't kick in the way I think they will because I don't take them a lot. So it's now Saturday, and I am a professional real estate agent, and do not judge me on this story professionally. But I decide to leave that morning to do a showing for a young couple who I don't know that well yet, and I really need to do this showing because if I don't show this house, they just go see another realtor because people are finicky and they'll go wherever. But I smartly grab a puppy pad on my way out the door because I've taken stool softeners, you guys, and I'm leaving my home away from a bathroom. So I go to the first house and things are okay. A little gurgle, a little bubble, but I'm okay. Then they want to add another house to the showing. So we drive to the next house and thankfully I drive faster than them. As I get there before them, as I get out of my car and start to shit my pants on the way into the house. But I have a puppy pad in a stranger's home, and I'm in their spare bathroom cleaning myself up a bit and trying to find a place to hide the stinky puppy pad as my clients come in the door. And I was like, hey, so we're gonna do this showing. You guys will just wander around as I'm totally gauging where every toilet might possibly be in this house I've never been in. And sure enough, I'm okay. So I feel like I'm gonna be fine. They would like to add one more house to the list of showings for the day. So I get in my minivan and we're both headed from Eagan to Bloomington. So it's a decent drive. And all of a sudden, I realize I'm not gonna make it. So I pull over into a completely suburban neighborhood where children are playing on a hill I can remember. As I pull up and I run around to the passenger side and I hike my foot up on the outside door rail as I try to use one door to protect me as I poop in a gutter with complete abandon. And I think this is my life. I have come to this point that I have taken too many stool softeners. Like, who does such a thing? So I clean myself up. Thankfully, I'm at an age with my children where I have lots of baby wipes in my car still, thank God. And I clean up and go to the third showing. And honestly, you guys, I feel sort of okay. But then I get in my car and I just get waves of heat and I don't feel good and I'm feeling sick. So I call my spouse and I say, I'm headed to the urgent care. He's like, okay. And as soon as I get in there, I realize I am not okay. I now have cold and hot, and I'm wearing a winter jacket, and I'm in the ER room or urgent care room, and I'm shaking, and my jaw is going back and forth, and I'm like, can I have another blanket? And the nurse literally like throws it at me, and I was like, can I get help going to the bathroom? And she's like, there's the porta sit thing. So I'm not getting much help at this point. They give me a CAT scan, and they come to find out I have a golf ball size abscess in my rectal. So I am severely sick. I call my spouse and I say, honey, my friend Beth is gonna come get me because she and I do a lot of hospital visits with each other because she has Crohn's and I've been with her through a lot. And my husband is going to perform as a magician at our children's annual fundraiser that night. And I don't wanna ruin it for him to have to sit in the hospital with me. So we go to the hospital, Beth picks me up and takes me there. And the doctor insists that they first shove a giant needle in my asshole to try to find the abscess to drain it before we do surgery. So twice I endure that procedure before the jackass lets them cut me open. So I go up and they say, we're gonna have surgery now. And okay, my friend Beth is told she can't really stay because she's not family. So she leaves, and as she's leaving, they say, we've been trying to reach your husband. And I said, oh, he's performing magic at a children's event. It's fine. You'll get to him later. I'm okay. So they take me to the emergency room. And as I'm recovering, I don't know if any of you have had this, but they actually put a warming blanket over you. It's made of like aluminum material, something that's very sci-fi. But it slipped off of me as they were moving me from one bed to the other. So I'm shivering again, like my jaw's shaking and I feel terrible. And I'm like, is this another abscess? They're like, nope, we'll warm you up in a minute. And as they go to open the door, as another nurse comes in, I see my lovely, handsome husband at the station. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. I go to sleep. And I wake up the next morning. And honestly, when an abscess is gone, you feel amazing. Like you feel like it is that quick, it goes away. So I feel pretty good. And my husband comes in the room and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go home. And he's like, yeah, it's amazing. You feel so much better. Like you were a wreck. I go, yep. But he didn't see the worst of it. He didn't see all the shitting and the shaking and whatever. But he says I look better. So I tell him, I say, well, yeah, how was the magic show? He's like, oh, I showed up at the event and they said they didn't even need me. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, I was at the event, but they didn't need me, so I just stayed. It was super boring. I said, did you get a few phone calls from the hospital? He says, I didn't hear them. It was really loud. And I said, oh, so you enjoyed yourself at the party? He's like, no, you didn't miss anything. I was like, no, I don't think you get the point. Your wife is in the hospital having had emergency anal surgery, and you're just sitting at a party hanging out. So I was not happy with him, and he's trying to make it better. He goes to my first doctor appointment with me post-op, and the doctor's talking to me about what we have to do because I have a drain hanging out of me, which is now going to be some of his work to do. And so we're chatting, and I don't think we mentioned it to the doctor, but maybe we did, that we were about to head to Mexico for a vacation with our children for spring break, and I feel great. So I'm like, we're going to go. The doctor's like, okay, be careful. And I was like, oh, be careful, it's Mexico, I'm fine. But what I don't think about while we're there is that maybe I shouldn't go scuba diving underwater where there's a lot of pressure. And so I go scuba diving. First time in 10 years, my husband's first time ever in his life. And to be honest, not a good scuba diving. It's just a bunch of concrete and bricks. They built a fake peninsula where boats could park. So I saw like no good fish. And I come out of it, whereas any of you scuba dive, I had to carry the tank on my back down the beach and into the water and then carry it back up the beach. And I'm feeling sort of okay. And I don't mention to the scuba dive teacher that maybe with a, drain hanging out of my ass, I shouldn't be here. So we also go into the hot tub at my friend's house. We do a couple other things. I'm not thinking about any of this until I'm driving the next morning on the way over a 4-hour drive between Mexico and Arizona, past Border Patrol and desert, that I don't feel good again, that I'm getting hit by another one of these. So I'm sitting there uncomfortably, and we get to our rental house in Arizona. I tell my husband, I'm gonna go to the ER. He's like, what? I said, yeah, I got another abscess, I'm pretty sure. So I first was gonna drive myself, and he's like, no, I'll take you. So he takes me to the ER, but we've got 2 little kids, and we're alone in a place we don't know anybody. So he takes them to the Children's Museum and hangs out with them. When I finally Google, what do you do when you have an abscess? And I I'm asked to go get a CAT scan again to prove I have one. So they do another CAT scan. And before the results come back, I go to the sink and I go to the cupboard and I pull out every towel I find and I run it under really hot water. And then I just sit on it till I get relief. And it stinks in the room real bad. I ended up draining my own abscess the second time. So I did one thing smartly. They asked the doctors, like, can I look? And I'm like, I'm literally like, pardon everybody, I'm like dripping on the floor as I'm going from sink to clean myself up. And they're like, you need to stay overnight. And I was like, nope, I got a vacation to go to. We're good. So I make my husband come pick me up. I have to sign like against doctor's orders, you're leaving. And we go back to the rental house and we get there and I say to my husband, finally I start to break down and I'm crying and sobbing like, I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was gonna be in another hospital. I was gonna have another surgery and I'm real upset. And he's like, yeah, but you're okay and we're gonna be fine. And he goes to pick me up some very big maxi pads at the local grocery store to help me out. And I said, honey, can you get me the mattress off the bed to put in the living room so we can lay down and watch a movie with the kids? He's like, wow, that sounds complicated. Are you sure? And I go, I'm going to kill you, motherfucker. Get me the mattress, lay it on the floor so I can just relax a little bit. And I did recover, and I am much better. And there are other things that happen medically after that are attached to it. But overall, I think to myself, I don't think I'm really the best judge of my own personal health, nor of how to best take care of myself. So I'm trying to do better at that. Thanks.
Keep it going for Elizabeth. Oh my gosh. If you come to Strike Theater, if you're all in love with storytelling now, we once did a show called The Shit Show, which was like all just people sharing times they like shit accidentally out and about. It was a real bonding moment, I'll say. Like, I've never felt closer to an audience. All right, we have one more storyteller tonight. Before we bring them up, I just want to remind you, tomorrow night in this very room at 7 p.m. will be the CONvergence poetry slam, where poets similar to this can sign up, and you have up to 3 minutes to do 2 rounds of poetry tomorrow. There will be a sign-up sheet out there. Write your poems tonight. Whatever, practice, write them down, bring them. Sometimes we have haikus, sometimes we have 3-minute long spoken word pieces, everything in between, totally fun. I think this is our 10th or 11th year doing the Poetry Slam. This is our first year doing the Story Slam, so thank you everyone for being pioneers out there tonight. Yeah. And make a bunch of noise as we welcome our next storyteller to stage, Jamie!
Hey there. I call this one the power of volunteering. You thought you were done with that. No, this one starts in sort of CONvergence 6, so like 2005, 6, or 7 in there. It's a little fuzzy, it's been a while. But I got roped into volunteering for operations because they have the radios, you see. And you get to talk on radio. And that was a cool thing. And so I get trained up to be a wandering host. But the thing is about CONvergence in that era, for those of you who are there, it's very party. And the old hotel, the DoubleTree or the Radisson, or whatever it was at that time, because I literally don't know. It's been a few name changes. But that big party hall and everything else meant that a lot happened. But the important part here is that at that time, I was living in Washington State, which means that I didn't really get tired until 2 in the morning. Which meant that I was perfectly positioned to start taking the party shifts, so like midnight to 3 a.m., that kind of thing. So I even did a couple of 1 to 4s, just because I had the time zones on my side. Why not? But what that did is it gave me a lot of interesting experience with what you find out there in the convention and questionable decisions people make, because the wandering host's job is to find those questionable decisions and steer them in a better direction. And what that means is you need to be calm on the radio, talking to the bridge on, okay, yes, I have a thing, and being very calm, and calm is critical on the radio because you're not supposed to actually tell the entire radio net that you have a missing kid in front of you who wants their mom. you have special language you use. And especially if you have an injured kid, there's different languages you use for that. But the thing is that you don't want to share the urgency and specific details. So you have to be a little circumspect. There's a little lingo you go through. I'm sure they still have it in there. And I learned how to do this. And I was out there dealing with a variety of things. One memorable case, probably 2009. It was, I want to say, 12:30 in the morning, and CONvergence Central, that big place down in front of the pool, but by the balcony, was just bumping around, as it is. And there was a guy just having a hell of a time, and he was obviously a norm, someone who isn't here. He definitely didn't have one of these on. And that's where I had to come in. So it's like, okay, buddy, we need to get you out down that ramp over there, and let's see what's going on. And he started spinning me a story that, yeah, I'm a super platinum member. The hotel will listen to me over here. It's like, okay, buddy, look here. The convention we're with rents out this entire hotel, the one across the street, and 2 more besides that. They like money more than they like you. Come on, let's go. And I got him out, but he had to do a little handsy stuff on the way out. That's kind of the price you pay sometimes, anything with very drunk people. But the thing that really hit me a few years later, after I moved to the East Coast, so the time zones were not on my side anymore, and I moved over to nerf herders, which I had friends working for and family. Hey, I see you. And I was not doing so much herding of drunks and just doing normal herding of people, often on the radio, because I had a pretty good radio voice at that point. But the lesson I'm bringing here is actually more in the last 5 years. So we're talking, 10 years after I really started doing this one. And it comes into my day job, the thing I actually get paid for. And I'm a computer nerd. We occasionally have disasters. And when we have disasters, it pays to be calm and low-key, bring the energy down in a room of a bunch of people who really want to panic right now. They really do. And they're just looking for that excuse to start getting head up. And if you have that calm voice, same as we've been practicing on the radio net for little years for me, people get down, they focus on the task, and they solve the problem. Wash, rinse, repeat. And other people started modeling after me for how I talk on the radio. Not radio. No, Zoom. When I was talking on the Zooms, video, not just radio. Fancy. Anyway, talking on the Zooms, trying to keep things down and level, and just level of communication I put out, just because when you're logging in incidents, because I did a bunch of stuff as both comms and on dispatch in the bridge, when you're logging an incident, passing in details for the post-convention review when things get weird, especially if you have to whistle in an ambulance, which happens. You need to have all the details in there just in case. Lawyers like to have the details, so you do that. So I took that approach into my day job of crisis management, and people really like that. They consider me one of the top responders for this sort of thing, which is a little special because I'm not coming from the direction people expect to have that kind of experience. They're looking for people coming from much bigger companies, the kind of companies that have like big global major problems. So you're talking about multi-time zone response in like 3 continents and stuff like that. And here's little old me, who just did this work with a nonprofit and volunteer at that, who managed to pick up this experience in just public safety and learning how to keep emotions down and people focused on task, which is a thing I totally took home from CONvergence and volunteering. You can too. Maybe next year you're here. You can talk on the radios. Thank you very much.
Keep it going for Jamie. Awesome. And I don't think you have to wait for next year. I think you can go down to volunteers and get placed somewhere right now if you want. They're looking for late night party room hosts. Anyways, thank you so much to this room of people. I think almost all of them were telling their first stories here tonight, so let's make a bunch of noise for them. Keep it going for Nathaniel, Pat, Robert, Ted, Elizabeth, Jose, and Jamie. Wordslinger's Way has programming through the rest of the weekend. Check out our calendar out there. I'll be hosting the Poetry Slam 7 p.m. tomorrow. You have a whole day to write your poems and come sign up for them. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Hope to see you again real soon.